Zelon here from WynnStrength.com, bringing you the 5th week of my new training block where I'm doing a hybrid modification of the barbell medicine strength template. If you've been watching the previous 4 weeks, you'll understand what I'm trying to do here, where we're trying to increase our 1 rep max strength based on the original strength program, but we want to include some modifications that would help drive up a little bit more cardiovascular, GPP, endurance and stamina, as well as prepare for some shift to some more strongman style movements. So that is basically kind of including the dark horse style of training where we do some supersets, and the exercises we're choosing to modify with either back, ab, or strongman style movements. So that's kind of where the modifications are coming in. Hopefully what that does is it helps us both drive up the 1 rep maxes as well as drive up that GPP and prepare the body for some more strongman style movements. That's a plan anyway. So we're 5 weeks in, and I think the plan is going pretty well. This will be the final week before a mini deload next week for week 6. So it's a 12-week program. Looks like we have a middle of the week deload week where we're still driving some heavy weights, but we're not taking the week off. And what's surprising is after a couple of months of training where I've always kind of thought that I do need that 4th week off or a break after the 4th week, following this program and driving through past what I normally do with that 4th week of rest is actually had some surprising results. So we open up with a couple of really good improvements in the lifts. So we're opening up with like the squats where we're 10 pounds shy of the 1 rep max, and then we're also hitting the same, my current 1 rep max for the overhead pressing. For the deadlifts, we've actually broken my old PR by 10 pounds, so we actually cracked the 500 pound club for the deadlifts, which I'm really stoked about. So we're doing 505 for a heavy single, and that I'll play the video later obviously, but it didn't look and feel that heavy as I thought it would leading up to this program. And with that, on the same day we did a new bench press heavy single, so we hit a 320 for a single for the bench press. Old bench press PR was 315, and we're just in week 5 of the program, so we're already hitting some PRs, which is kind of awesome, just to say the least. We're 5 weeks in. I mean, the PRs like 5-10 pounds, and it's in the squat and the bench. In the bench and the deadlift. If you remember to the old. So it's really cool that we've hit 2 new PRs in the bench and the deadlift. If you recall back to the old dark horse training template, those are the 2 lifts that were stalling back then. So maybe this is some of that like delayed reward from that program, obviously about 5 to 6 weeks ago now. But we have increased our bench and the deadlift, so we've caught up, and you'll notice I did PRs for the squat and the overhead press for the dark horse template. So we've caught up some of the lifts. We've shot up the other 2 out of the big 4 that I like to concentrate on, and it doesn't feel like I'm losing too much of that stamina and that GPP. But what's most surprising with the fact that I'm hitting a PR mid-program is the fact that this would have been a rest week for me. So I would have normally liked to do 4 weeks and then taken a week off. 4 weeks, taking a week off. That's generally how I've programmed in the past. Yet, we hit 5th week of training hard. This was still following that same progression. It wasn't a deload week by any means. That's going to come in week 6. That's next week. But pushing through that 4th week actually, I don't know if it contributed to it, but that accumulated fatigue and that accumulated stress actually paid off in the end, where we did hit 2 new PRs that didn't actually feel as strenuous as I thought they would be. They were probably closer to, say, RPE 9, maybe 9.25. Like, it was pushing heavy, but it wasn't as heavy as I thought it would be, and I think the footage will show that it's not as slow as it could have been if it was a true RPE 10. I think if I really had to push myself, we could have probably eked out another 10 pounds, maybe 5-10 pounds on each lift. But what's like changing in my brain is that, do I even need as big of a deload as I've been doing in the past, where I've been pretty much set like 4th week, let's break, take some time off, at times not even go to the gym, so I just take a full week of rest off. And I'm wondering if that's been having some negative consequences on my training progress. And nevertheless, like, move on. It's a learning experience. We're learning some new things every time you step in here. You should be learning something new about yourself. But I think it just goes to show that you shouldn't ever be stuck in your ways. I probably would have looked at the program in the past and be like, oh, I should plug in a rest week on this 5th week and then start again next week. And who knows, maybe I would have hit a bigger PR after a rest week. But I didn't, so I can't clone me and make another training program do the exact same thing. That'd be cool, but impossible right now. So I think it's a great lesson for me, and probably something you should look at yourself, is that are these mindsets and foundations you place around your own training that you think are true because of past experiences, are they going to be true in the future? So maybe what the case is that I did need that rest week in the past, but now moving forward with a different training program, different training variables, maybe I've adapted to the new stress, and then now we can add on more stress to the work week, so that maybe that's how we're continuously improving and building upon what we've built in the past. So maybe what was true last year isn't true this year, and I think that's probably going to be true in some regards to the year after this, obviously, and then we're going to start learning about what we do need to change and what we can keep staying the same. So I think as we get stronger, as our body changes, as the body adapts, we need to constantly be reassessing what we know is optimal to our own bodies, because I don't think what works today is necessarily going to help me work tomorrow. So that's something to keep in mind. What I'll do is I'll switch over to the voiceovers and we'll take some footage of the actual training. So starting off week 5 with safety squat bar squats. Top set of 430 pounds at an RPE of around 8.5. This is about 10 pounds shy of my last tested 1 rep max. So about 5 weeks. That's about 7 weeks ago where we tested that. So I'm pretty stoked to see me able to squat this back up without as much effort. It doesn't feel anywhere close to a maximal lift. So it's good to see that the strength is coming into that safety squat, the safety bar squat. And I think that's coming to some just familiarity with the way that the weight is distributed, and having a focus on keeping that back as upright as possible. And hopefully that transfers over to the regular bar back squat, where the weight won't be as off-centered, and that increased back strength I think will help push those weights up a bit easier than last time. So again, focusing on keeping those knees spread out, as well as obviously maintaining that bracing in the midsection there. And I think that's really helped. Well, the safety squat bar has really helped with that by forcing you to keep that rigidity in that midsection there. And we follow that up with some ab wheels. And I think that's also another factor that's helping here. Kind of that movement is one of the things that really helps stability in all of the big compound movements, because you're generally trying to stop the body from moving in a certain way, whether that be during the deadlift or the squat. The rest of your body's moving, but you really want that torso and core to stay as rigid and solid as possible. So movements like this with the kneeling ab wheel rollouts, reverse crunches, power off presses, even some L-sits or L-sit pull-ups are things that would help with this, where you're really trying to think of how to make the core stay stable while the rest of you is kind of moving. And just wrapping that up with some fat bar chin-ups. Chin-ups are always good to throw in whenever you can, and using that fat bar is helping to bring up some grip issues. I think just because you are opening, anytime you open up that grip, it does help drive up some grip training right there. Here we have a top set overhead press at 215 pounds, 5 pounds shy of my last tested 1 rep max. That sticking point there at the forehead. One way to get through that is to just do some partials just below that point. So probably eye level partials will help with this. Supersetted that with some static holds. It's about 225 pounds a hand for about 20 seconds. This is definitely one of those mental tests where it's more mental than it is physical. You can tell that because I didn't drop the weight. I chose to set the weight down. So definitely something to work on in the future. This will help with farmer carries, obviously, where the grip strength will probably not outlast the walking section of that. And here we have our volume work, 175 pounds for a set of 4. Working on driving through that sticking point, again right there. And that's going to come down to form as well, making sure that head shoots forward as fast as possible. And here we start off day 2 with a new bench press PR. This is 320 pounds for a new PR by 5 pounds. Pretty stoked with that result. And again, what's great with this is there's no bicep or shoulder pain. We're pushing through some weights there without having any issues with the shoulder, which is awesome. Again, bench press deadlift superset. This will be another PR, so double PR for day 2, 505 pounds for a single. That beats my old PR by 10 pounds. So again, stoked to see this too. Alternating grip, and it comes up quite fast. Relatively no real sticking point there. That's probably good RPE 8. The bench press kind of a good RPE 8 too. And then we have some back off sets here, 265 pounds for a set of 4. I could probably do with a slight pause on the chest, but again, one thing that I've been working on is keeping that leg drive and trying to push my traps into the pad, as well as work on that lat strength and lat tightness during the bench press. And here we have our volume set. We started off, we did 2 sets before at 420 pounds and then dropped that last set at 415 pounds. So a little bit of fatigue setting in there. Obviously the deadlift is one of those more taxi movements, so I found that out of all the lifts, the deadlift is probably one where the volume sets, I tend to have to drop some of the weight towards that last set or the last 2 sets there, depending on the day. And we have a tempo squat, 5-3-0, so 5 counts down, 3 count hold at the bottom, and then up as fast as possible. You'll notice I did change shoes there to get that heeled squat shoe in there to get some more practice in that. Again, I'm doing a lot of these squatting and deadlift and any accessory movements here without any belt, just to add a bit more stimulus to the work without having to worry about loading too much. So that belt does allow you to lift a bit more weight, obviously, compared with beltless, depending on how you train, but for the most part, if you have a belt on, you can generally lift more, squat more, deadlift more. When you take that belt off, what you're really doing is mitigating some of that load being placed on the back, so you can kind of manage stress that way. Whereas if I were to put a belt on there, the weight would go up, and that might have an issue with my ability to recover in the long run over the course of the week. So I think by performing all of the accessory movements without a belt has helped mitigate that stress, and we're really focusing on technique as well as tension in the legs here mainly, and everything else in there. So what's great with the tempo version of the lifts is that you can really focus on the technique. Where is that knee tracking? Where is the weight getting distributed on the heels? How are you firing up? Am I pausing at the right depth? You have a lot of time to think about that. And again, just superset that with some fat bar pull-ups. Again, I'm liking the fat bar as somewhat of an extra grip strength workout. Kind of adds a little more. I've noticed I've had to bring that grip in a little bit, so slightly narrower than shoulders, just to offset the weird grip that my hands have to take. That wraps up day 2. So we start off day 3 with more squatting. This will be beltless squat. This is a top set of 385 pounds for a set of 4, close to an RPE 9. Ideally, RPE 8 would have been the prescription here. But again, this is probably the heaviest I'll go with a regular barbell for the squat during this entire training block. And I think that's doing wonders for the shoulder and the bicep there, so kind of going to play along with that. You'll notice I am cutting the depth a little high there, probably an inch or two too high. Supers that with some power cleans, and that's the one thing that came apparent with the Dark Horse training program, was the fact that my power cleans weren't as strong as they could have been. So something I wanted to work on in this training block is to just throw in some power cleans just to get that practice in there and that technique, because there is a point where the weight gets to a certain level of effort where I can't drive up it as explosively as when the weight's a lot lighter. So that's definitely a technique and exposure issue I think I need to keep working on. Here we have it at half speed, just to see exactly how that bar travels up. Another great thing is to get some foam tiles and stack them up so you can drop the weights. You don't have to worry about damaging that garage floor or the platform or the weights. Here we're going to throw this down to 25% speed. Here I am trying to figure out that explosiveness in the hips. You really want to punch those hips forward to drive that weight up, because you really want to you want to have a high shrug at the top, and you really don't want to be curling the bar in any way. So that looks pretty good. Probably could do with a bit more hip drive. Maybe try and get the feet up off the floor for a bit more of an explosion. Now here we have Z presses, 135 pounds for sets of 10. Again, a Z press, I think it's a great accessory movement to help drive up the overhead press. I think that's what's been helping me a lot in the recent months there, is focusing on this lift, because you do take away that leg drive. And again, beltless, just to add a bit more stability requirements to the lift. So setting that with some pull-ups on the regular diameter pull-up bar. Let's do these for sets of 10. I like to just mix up the grip width every now and then. I don't think there's a correct way or a better way. Just do as many different grip widths as possible. And here we have some reverse crunches for a couple of sets of 10. And nice little super set there where we're working in back, arms, and abs while giving the shoulders a bit of a break from that Z press. And again, this is another one of the examples of those anti-movement ab workouts where we're trying to ideally the torso and legs stay in one line. That's something I'm working on, much like the kneeling ab wheel rollout. You're trying to work up to a standing ab wheel rollout. Until then, you kind of have that curl there. So you have day 4, starting off with some incline bench press. Again, sticking with that medium width grip, don't want to go too wide. Narrowness doesn't have an issue with the shoulders, but I've noticed again with the shoulders, the injury pain I experience is exacerbated when the grip is wide, so we kind of want to bring in that grip and mitigate any pain. So we did have to drop that down. That was 260 pounds for a set of 2. Now we're dropping that down to 255 pounds for a set of 2 to complete that set of 4. Probably got a little bit too eager there with the weight selection, but an easy 2 there for 255 pounds. Hopefully next week we'll be able to attack this a bit better. And then we have a 1-inch paused deadlift, so you want to hover just above the ground, count to 2. I mean, it's probably a 1-count pause realistically, and then drive up again. Again, this is one of those movements, accessory lifts, where we're not using the belt, and we're also mechanically disadvantaging the deadlift there, so we're adding some time under tension, removing any momentum and speed you might be able to gather up off the floor in order to make the lift harder without having to add extra weight. So here we have 385 pounds for a set of 4. And I really like these, especially for beginners and intermediates, because you are able to drive up some more volume without having to overstress the body with too much load and weight and intensity. So we start off the next superset with some L-sit pull-ups, just trying to combine some abs and back into one. Notice those legs dropping a little bit. So again, another example of anti-movement ab movements here. Next we move on to some sandbag overhead presses. During these movements, kind of a hybrid pseudo strongman style lift, or I mean this takes place of an atlas stone or any natural stone for that matter. Great thing with the sandbag is you can kind of drop it without having to worry about damaging anything. Then we have a little bit of a shortness of breath issue, so just kind of regaining and recuperating some vision there. I've noticed some carryover from the Dark Horse training program with those GPP endurance there, but still trying to push the limits every now and then. One thing to keep in mind with the sandbag presses, because we can't obviously load this heavier because it's stuck at a 100-pound bag, I try to play with the reps and play with the rest periods in between just to get some more stimulus there. And again, this isn't really to drive strength up, more to practice the movement of lifting something odd-shaped overhead, getting that balance down. The center of gravity on this is all wonky, so you really want to focus on the technique, work on lifting that up while staying balanced and maintaining form. And I mean, there will be some minor carryover to the overhead press with the barbell, but I wouldn't really use this or see this as an accessory lift for the overhead press. Just think of it as more of a GPP or like just a fun movement to play around with. Work on keeping that bag as close to the body as possible. You really don't want to curl it up. You want it to roll up the body as you stand up with it. You're definitely going to have a curled back when you pick this up, which is fine as long as you've got that base level of strength, and you can deadlift at least 100 pounds. Probably if you can deadlift your body weight, 100-pound sandbag shouldn't be too bad. And wrapping up day 4 with some stiff-legged deadlifts. It's very similar to Romanian deadlifts, except we're touching the floor every time, trying to keep those legs as straight as possible. Have loose knees, obviously, and think of shooting the hips back. So we really want to target the hamstrings and the lower back in this lift, and I'm not too worried about the bounce off the bottom, just because it is one of those accessory lifts, and we're just kind of wanting to add in more time under tension and get some volume and blood flowing through those hamstrings and spinal erectors. So that wraps up the 5th week of training of this modified strength template. Check out the blog. I'll leave some links below for that so you can find out. You can see the weights used and just listed down there. I highly recommend checking out the barbell strength template, all the other programs they do. This will be the 3rd time I've run this template. It's not going to be a review because obviously I'm changing up a lot of things, not doing the program as written, but I am taking some cues from it and hopefully keeping it in kind of the spirit of the barbell strength template. But with that being said, the previous 2 times I've run the program have been really successful for me in regards to bringing up the squat, the bench, the deadlift, and the press for a 1 rep max. So highly recommend using that template if that's something you want to do, if you want to bring up those 1 rep maxes and those big 4 lifts. So check out the website. I'll leave links below as well for their stuff. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.